And welcome to the stage, Karen Reiner.
I've been telling stories for my whole life, and a lot of my stories involve my mother, who we refer to as the cheapskate Charlie of the family. And my mother's here tonight, and I thought I would dedicate this story to her. So, now, in her defense, she grew up during the Depression. She's lived through periods of scarcity, you know, the energy crisis, the great toilet paper famine of 2020. So she couldn't help but stretch a dollar. But one thing that my mother was always generous with was her laughter. And she and her business partner, who is also here tonight, I grew up listening to them as they worked, laughing their heads off. They had so much fun. They always knew how to find humor in any situation. And that is kind of like home for me. So when and also as a young teenager, I was really fond of clean comedy, like Carol Burnett and Steve Martin and Gilda Radner and Irma Bombeck. So when I was 20-some years old and newly married, my husband said to me, if there was a magic wand that could make you successful at anything at all, regardless of how improbable and how unlikely, what would you like to be? And I said right away, I would love to be a stand-up comic, because I would want people to feel the way that I felt growing up, just having laughter and having humor and just enjoying your life. And then I asked him, what would you do if you had the magic wand? And he said he would be a Supreme Court justice. I'm not married to him anymore. But I wanted to bring laughter and joy and funniness, and he wanted to bring justice and you know. And so we did have a couple of kids, and you can guess who was the disciplinarian in the family. But anyway, so that was sort of like my dream, except I knew it was improbable because I was introverted, I was shy, I was terrified to stand in front of a microphone. So I did the next best thing. I became a human resources director. And there's a fair amount of comedy in that, believe me. So I knew it was improbable for me to become a comedian. But I did take an improv comedy class, and I have made some wicked funny Christmas cards with puns on them that my daughter Abby will attest to the embarrassment of. And I have some pretty good Halloween costumes that people look forward to every year on Facebook. And this is about as far as I got with my comedy career until one day I got bitten by the moth. And I signed up a slip, and I came up on stage, and I told a story, and people laughed, and it was the best feeling in the world. And I thought, wow, my mom and her friend Jill, they taught me what that feeling feels like. And then another time I got up on the stage, and people laughed, and at the end of the night, our host, who is, I think, the funniest person on the planet, said to me, Karen, you know what? You remind me of Irma Bombeck. Do you remember? Be still my heart, because what a compliment from him. And he didn't even know that she was something I admired growing up. So he's like, Karen, there's this thing called the Irma Bombeck Writers Conference. It only happens every other year. You might want to go to it. So I went home that night. I Googled it. The registration for it opened the next morning, and it said they sell out within an hour. So if Eric hadn't told me about that, I never would have gotten into it. So I got into that. I went to beautiful Dayton, Ohio, for a big getaway weekend. And, you know, when you go to a conference like that, they have you sign up for these little workshops. So the first workshop I signed up for was called Finding Your Voice. I go into it. The woman teaching it, her name is Alyssa Bassist. Do you know her? Okay, better. That's even better. Alyssa Bassist, and she says, everybody in this room, you are not Irma Bombeck. You have to find your own voice. You need to find your own voice that's humorous, that's true to yourself. And if you're looking for an example of an excellent person, you need to read a book, any book, by R. Eric Thomas. So I'm starting to think all my life, oh, this isn't meant to be. I'm not meant to do this. I'm not meant to do this. And then it's like, oh, the deadline for registering, Eric telling me to do it. The very first workshop, the woman says, look at Eric. So I turned 60 years old on my last birthday. And on July 25th of this year, I did stand-up comedy in a sold-out house of 439 people at the... And it took courage because I was shaking the whole time because the audience in a stand-up comedy is not like you people who are so supportive. So it took courage, it took elbow grease, but most of all, it took the example that my family and my mother's close friend gave me growing up about how powerful laughter is for the human spirit. And it took the inspiration of somebody like Eric encouraging somebody like me who stands up here every time with my knees shaking to go ahead and pursue that dream, magic wand or not. And my ex-husband, who has not donned a black gown since high school graduation, I want you all to encourage him. It's not too late to become a Supreme Court justice. Thank you.
Keep it going for Karen Reiner.